know the trouble with young people? Well, one of them anyway. 25 to 40-year-olds have never learned to garden, according to the Royal Horticultural Society. And there's something else they don't enjoy doing as much as older people. Voting. With just a month to go till the EU referendum, turnout has become a key issue. Everyone's desperate to convince us to vote. With that in mind, George Osborne and David Cameron headed to B&Q to talk about the economy.
The shock to our economy after leaving Europe would tip the country into recession. This could be, for the first time in history, a recession brought on ourselves. As I stand here in B&Q, it would be a DIY recession.
I know, you thought this show was the place to come for tortured metaphors. Elsewhere, things weren't so rosy either. Harriet Harman and Shirley Williams warned that not enough women's voices were being heard in the debate, while Nicola Sturgeon said all the doom-mongering was putting people off.
Well, I'd much rather we were campaigning positively. That's what I'm trying to do. I think in Scotland, certainly, we've got lots of experience of Treasury reports during referendum campaigns, and I think people have got the savvy to see through some of the overblown claims.
Meanwhile, Boris Johnson might have been a late bloomer as far as Euroscepticism is concerned, but on the campaign trail, he's no shrinking violet.
I think that they're rattled on the Remain side of the campaign because they're putting out more propaganda than we've seen at any time since 1992, when they said that we couldn't leave the European exchange rate mechanism. Do you remember that? And what happened? It was a liberation for this economy. We did better than ever before. They were wrong then, my friends, and they are wrong now.
That said, there were times he just wanted to avoid a face full of compost.
I was told there was a gentleman who had an egg he was going to throw at me. Can you believe that? There he is. There's the man with the egg. Now, there are people hungry in this country, my friend. Don't waste that egg.
Immigration is likely to dominate the final weeks of the EU campaign. And across Europe, fears over free movement of people are driving the rise of the far right. In the Austrian presidential election this week, the far-right candidate, Norbert Hofer, lost by just 31,000 votes. Back at home, things were exceptionally feisty in the House of Commons chamber, where Angela Eagle enjoyed tearing into the Tories. With David Cameron away at a G7 meeting in Japan, her opponent was that sensitive little wallflower, George Osborne.
Following his second omni-shambles budget earlier this year, I see the Chancellor's approval ratings have collapsed by 80 points amongst his own party. Now, given that he seems to be following a similar career path, isn't it time he turned to Michael Portillo for advice? Last week, the former would-be leader said of the Queen's speech, after 23 years of careful thought about what they would like to do in power, Michael Portillo said, the answer is nothing. Absolutely. There is nothing they want to do with office or power. Now, the government has nothing to do, nothing to say, and thinks nothing, is what he said.
Ooh, prickly. Your move, George.
I'll tell you what we've done in recent weeks. We've taken another 1 million people out of tax altogether. We've frozen fuel duty. We've cut business rates for small businesses. We've seen the deficit fall by another 16 billion. We've delivered a record number of jobs, and we've introduced a national living wage.
Outside Parliament, Jeremy Corbyn took time away from his allotment to protest with steelworkers who want the government to help Tata find a buyer for their UK plants.
Putting pressure on from the very beginning. One of them is to halt the Chinese steel dumping, and indeed I went to see the Chinese president to raise that very issue with him. The other thing is a European-wide rate to prevent Chinese dumping, and that is beginning to happen, but again the British government has been the last in line to do anything about it. And thirdly, the British government must be prepared to take a public stake in the industry.
Corbyn's predecessor as Labour leader, Tony Blair, popped up to say we should nip ISIS in the bud by invading the Middle East again.
Airstrikes are not going to defeat ISIS. They've got to be tackled on the ground now. It doesn't mean to say that it's our forces all the time. Our forces can be in support. But do not be under any doubt at all, if you want to defeat these people, you're going to have to go and wage a proper ground war against them.
And if you think that was the most controversial political intervention of the week, wait until you see the Remain campaign's video for young people, which seems to think they're allergic to the letter G. I'm exhausted just watching that. Anyway, I must get back to my begonias. I'm sure the judges from Chelsea will be along any minute. Hello? Hello? I think I've done something really avant-garde here. Hello? Anyone? Hello? Hello?